Hello and welcome to Outlook Budget 2024. My name is Wendell Badri and it is a pleasure being here with you. I look forward to spending the next few minutes with you as we go through a number of things that has happened in the Guyana economy over the past year. And of course, we have the budget presentation expected to be tabled in just a matter of days. So we are looking forward to that. And we will be discussing all this on the program as we continue to bring you updates and information to help make your life much better, much easier, and to altogether ensure that we improve ourselves as we go through this new transformation that we are experiencing in this beautiful country of ours. It gives me great pleasure to also introduce to you my panelists for today, who will be helping me with looking at what I have just outlined. And please allow me to introduce them in no specific order. We have the immediate past president of the Private Sector Commission, Mr. Paul Chung. He is also the honorary secretary of the Private Sector Commission. Good day, sir, and I hope all is well with you.
Thank you.
To his left is Mr. Joel Bagwandin. He is a financial analyst and he has been on the scene for a very long time. I'm pretty sure you have seen and heard much of him, and we look forward to hearing more from him today. Joel, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
And of course, the president of the Guyana Manufacturing and Services Association, Mr. Ramsey Ali, is also a member of this panel. We look forward to hearing what he has to share with us, and especially from the point of view of the manufacturing and services sector of our country. Mr. Ali, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, gentlemen, it's a pleasure. And as I mentioned, we're here to talk about the performance of our economy in 2023. But before I get into the 2023 performance, I have been fortunate enough, perhaps, to read a number of reports. And some of those being the ICLAC report, the ECLAC, and we have the IMF report and the IDB reports. I'm just going to share with you some figures that I extracted from some of those reports, and then I would want to have your feedback on a question that follows. So, in one of the reports, it says that ICLAC said the Latin America and the Caribbean remains on a low growth path. So this is the Latin America and Caribbean region, excluding Guyana. This is not inclusive of Guyana. It says that it's on a low growth path. And I'd want to understand why perhaps they are saying that. So maybe that's something that Joel can help us understand. If he wishes to help us understand, right, why that is so. But at the same time, while they're saying that the Latin America and Caribbean region is on a low growth path, they're saying that Guyana is projected to have an increase in economic growth at a rate of about 39.2%. Yeah, so while the Caribbean region and Latin American region is on a low growth path, meaning their growth is not as fast, is not as rapid as Guyana's or maybe other parts of the world, right? Guyana, on the other hand, is soaring. They're on a fast, rapidly growing trajectory. Yeah. The IMF has also said that Guyana's economy is expected to grow by some 20% per year during the period 2024 to 2028. If I may start with Joel, because there's something I want to understand here, Joel. In this instance, we have the IMF saying 20%. We have ICLAC saying 39.2% projection growth rate. Why is there a difference in numbers? Can you help us understand that?
Well, as an analyst and as someone who I have an advisory company, so corporate companies hire my services to do these type of forecasting as well, and economic advisory. And in a recent work I did for a large corporate client, I did some of my own estimates. And this is before the IMF came out with their forecast. And the IMF forecast is consistent with mine. I have forecasted about on average 30% growth for the same period up to 2028, 2029, thereabout. And of course, what drive these forecasts, they're assumption based. So the difference in ICLAC versus the IMF or versus the World Bank or a local entity or a local analyst like myself is based on the assumptions that they make and how closely that they have been following the developments in Guyana. The IMF, I would say, is more precise, and I say this because of the work that I have done. And a forecast is driven by what is taking place. There is predictability. We know with a great degree of certainty, and we've seen the manifestation of achieving these targets, that we're going to ramp up production, oil production by 2030 to exceed maybe 1.3 million barrels per day. Already we have with the approval of projects from the time we've started, we've exceeded about 600. We're producing at a rate of maybe over 400,000 barrels per day right now, and that more projects are scheduled to come online throughout the year. So that is one of the things, that predictability in terms of what is happening in the oil and gas sector. You can easily make very, at least precise or closely accurate forecasts in terms of what would be the outcome. The same thing for the non-oil economy. You've seen, and we've had the benefit now today, institutions that are doing forecasts, at least today, compared to 2020, are more accurate today than 2020, because we've had the benefit of 3 years to see what are the government projects, where they're allocating resources, what are the transformational projects. So the forecast is very easy to come up with the assumptions that would demonstrate a realistic, I should say accurate, but a more realistic representation of what the future would look like, or the outlook, that is. ECLAC is maybe the variance there, because ECLAC is not so much, they don't have that kind of direct interface as in the case with the IMF and us here to interact with the policymakers, interact with the private sector. They have a more first-hand understanding to help to inform the data that they have as well. So those are, I'm trying to keep it short and simple
I understand.
to explain the variances.
Yeah, I understand. And you said you made some projections which are close to the IMF's. And you said earlier there are a number of factors that need to be considered.
Correct.
To arrive at those figures. Could you help us understand what are some of those factors?
To keep it simple, the factors are, take for example oil and gas. We know oil, and we can predict the rate of growth in the oil and gas sector in terms of production. So we know what we can make assumptions based on current prices, current world market prices, average prices, looking at the historic trend. We can make assumptions. We know what are the fiscal terms, so we could forecast what is the revenue that the government will earn in the future. We know what is the withdrawal rules from the Natural Resources Fund, so we can forecast how much of that will go into the national budget. Right. Looking at the trend, looking at the 3 budgets that we've had, we can forecast how capital expenditure would grow. We can forecast how recurrent expenditure in social welfare would grow, and the government has articulated their projects, their plans. It is well documented, well articulated. So there is great predictability on the side of public policy, public expenditure, or public investment in the economy. Then we can also, by virtue of being within the private sector, operating within the private sector, you see the developments that are being pursued by private companies. You've seen the investments being pursued by large companies in manufacturing, diversifying, and so on, and you look at the growth rate across sectors. So you could make some reasonable predictions in the non-oil economy. Agriculture, the same thing. So looking at all of those factors, the projects, the rate of expansion, and taking all these other variables and sensitivities and so on, that is how you could make those projections. Those are some of the factors. Essentially,
if I may, in my own words, simplify it further, and I hope I'm not putting myself out there and I will get shot down. It's basically taking what is known, right, and looking at the pattern and making a note of that pattern and trying to predict based on that.
Based on assumptions. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Correct. I know I've had you speaking for quite some time now, but just to provide a little bit more context before we jump over to the Private Sector Commission, I wanted to find out about GDP, Gross Domestic Product. What is it and how is it calculated?
Okay, so let me keep it simple. It is very technical, but I'm not going to get into the technicalities. there are three methods or three approaches to compute GDP. There is the income approach, measuring national income. There's the production approach, and there's the expenditure approach. Then there is nominal GDP, and then there is real GDP. So one is based on current prices. One is based on, say, 2012 prices.
Okay.
The difference between nominal GDP and real GDP is that real GDP is adjusted to take into account inflation, because inflation erode the value for money, so to speak. Now, we here in Guyana, we use two approaches to compute or to measure GDP. We use the production approach, and we use the expenditure approach. Now, the production approach is simply the productive output, measuring the productive output in each economic sector. So, for example, we have the manufacturing sector. What is the total output of goods and services produced in the manufacturing sector? Same thing for the services sector, agriculture, the total productive output per sector. And then you have, if you're to use the expenditure method, there is a mathematical equation. It's government spending, all of government spending, plus consumption expenditure. That covers household expenditure, the monies that households spend in the economy to sustain their homes, pay their utility bills, in the grocery, etc., entertainment, etc. Then there is investment, measuring expenditure from an investment perspective, and you have domestic investments, investment by local companies, and you have foreign direct investment. And then you have, of course, in that equation, you have the net exports of the country, which is known as the trade balance of the country as well, or a current account balance, which is basically the difference between exports and imports. So it is the sum total of that. That is how GDP is measured, to put it simply.
All right, all right. Well, I do hope that you have learned more about gross domestic product, and that you're able to, from this, be able to come up with your own analysis of things around us. Yeah, Mr. Chow. Of course, 2023 has seen a number of things happening throughout that year, but during that year, you were the president. Up to a period, you were the president of the Private Sector Commission. May I ask for your assessment of that commission, the private sector, under your tenure or during your tenure, and even to the end of 2023? What would be your assessment?
Well, I mean, as you rightly said, I mean, and even the analysts and the international agency, they pronounce on Guyana's economy. I mean, our economy is the fastest growing in the world. I mean, we not only stand out in the Caribbean and Latin America, but globally, Guyana stand out. And indeed, it's not just the oil sector that is performing, the non-oil sector, which is expected to grow at over 9% this year. Last year, I think it was around 11%. It's exceptional, and some of the things that are important is, I mean, the policies, I mean, that the government implement. Agriculture, I mean, the focus on agriculture is important. Guyana has, so much potential and all the right ingredients to excel in agriculture. Arable land, fresh water, and I mean, sunlight, I mean, so they move into soybean and corn production. The rice sector is doing well, and we see more investment in the coconut and other sectors. So that's one area. Health, the health sector, investment in health sector, I mean, is important. Our population, there's something that affects our people, over the years. So having a better or improved health system is important to building confidence in the country and getting people to remigrate and come back and participate in this development. We're a country with a small population, and we need to attract and retain our people to help in the development. And we're on the right path. Growing. The private sector commission and the entire private sector is buoyed by where Guyana is going. And that's why you see so many private sector companies investing. We are also happy that the government is assisting small businesses, you know, through the Ministry of Trade, the cash grant, so that small businesses can grow and strive. And I mean, those are the ones that really create employment and you know, help to boost the economy and grow. I mean, in those areas. So we're happy with the economy, and I mean, excited for the future. And I'm sure not only us, but you know, all Guyanese and people even further afield, because you see, you know, almost weekly people come here looking to participate in the development and the way Guyana is developing, and to set up businesses and to do things here.
You mentioned earlier policies, the government's policies, you know, affect, right, directly some of the things that happen within the private sector. What I would like to know, because you singled out already some of those initiatives, policies that have been rolled out by the government. What I would like to know is how those policies have helped to benefit the members of your commission, if you can speak to that.
Well, I mean, you know, Guyana, we have a we still have a deficit in terms of infrastructure development, and we've seen over the years, the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of money have been invested in infrastructure. If you have to cross the Demerara Harbor Bridge or come, you know, travel, it's a mess every day. In terms, you know, the delay, I mean, it's very costly, because again, we have a small population, and the amount of man hours we lose in people maintaining the bridge. I mean, that's something very, very important. I mean, it's transformative. The gas to energy project, you know, those that also would help to build our economy even further, and strengthen our manufacturing sector, and open opportunities for new manufacturing to get on stream. So those projects, and there are many others that the government has been implementing, and also the way they manage the macroeconomy, you know, is how they've removed taxation at times, you know, the excise tax on fuel, for instance. That would, you know, help to alleviate or reduce the inflation thing numbers, if, you know, the tax that remain there. You know, almost everybody, I mean, use petroleum products in one way or the other to go to work, to move goods and services from one place to the next. So it's simple. I mean, those are, you know, good measures that the government has taken to not only help businesses, but I mean the entire population.
And you're quite right when you alluded to the gas to energy project, you know, how it could help to benefit the lives of citizens and so on. And this would be a good time for us to jump over to the manufacturing and services sector, because we've been hearing since the you know, advent of this project, so to speak, that it will cut electricity by some 50%, electricity cost, I should say, by some 50%. And if I could get your reaction to that, Mr. Ali, and also I'd like for your assessment of the manufacturing and services sector for the past year.
Well, let me do the second one first.
Go ahead.
I mean, he passed a lot, so I have to find, I don't want to repeat what he said, because he covered almost everything. But let me see if I can focus on the manufacturing and what has happened in the last, not only last year, but the last couple of years. Because this growth is not only for last year, but it's a little while now.
So, sorry, if I may interject here, you're saying it's steady growth?
Yeah, I'm saying for the last couple of years, we have seen significant growth in this country in the manufacturing and services. That's what I'm saying.
Very
and it can be proven if one were to look at the published reports of some of the companies that do publish their reports,
right,
that do businesses, you will see the kind of banks and the manufacturers and so on. The company I work for, we're going to publish a report, and it's public information, so I can say it. We saw over 35% growth in our business.
Wow.
35% revenue and profit. So let me just see if I can break this down a little bit for you and keep it very simple, as you said. One of the things that is happening in Guyana, a lot of people don't talk about, is consumption. Consumption, people consuming. So what is happening is that, and I don't know what the number is, maybe Joel knows more than me, or Paul, but I don't think we have 750,000 people living here anymore. I don't believe it's 800,000. I don't know what it is. But I do know that there is more consumption taking place in this country. Simple because of the fact that there are more people living in this country, working and living in this country today. That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to talk about, expand a little bit on what Paul said, is the policy of the government from the time they came in. And it was about diversification away from oil and gas. Now, agriculture has seen, and is going to continue, I hope, and I'm sure it's going to continue when we see the budget next week, the investment the government has made in agriculture. And it's not only about the normal agriculture things that we've been doing for the last year, it's a diversification within agriculture. I'm talking about share house projects, I'm talking about GLDA, I'm talking about some of the self-sufficiency that the government wants to ensure that in the next 5 to 10 years, we, instead of importing these things, we have them right here.
Reducing
and
the
then
food
not only
import.
have it for consumption, but for export also. So those investments have been made or are being made. And I have the privilege of sitting on some of these boards, so I know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to give all the details, but there's a significant amount of effort being put into agriculture in this country. Paul talked a little bit about them. So that's one. The second, of course, is business on the whole and the expansion of business has taken place in the sense of technology transfer and all those things that government has made available to us over the last couple of years. There's a project that some of us benefit from the other day, PLC training that the government sponsored. A number of private sector companies have benefited from that. But to get back to your question now on that's going to be a game changer. The gas share product is going to be a game changer for production companies. There are a number of manufacturing companies in this country today that are not on the grid. And they're not on the grid not because of cost. They're not on the grid because of the reliability. A number of us, including the company I work for, we cannot go on the grid because of the quality of power we get. No, that project is going to solve that issue. Not only about the quality of the project, it's going to be the reliability. That's very, very important. The reliability of power as against the cost, together with the cost. Mm-hmm. So you can rest assured that your cost is going to come down significantly, so you can compete. A number of us cannot compete in the current because of our prices. The other game changer which you didn't mention, but I'm going to mention it, is that road that's coming from Latin. That's going to be a major game changer. Last year in around September, October, the GMSA hosted about 100 companies out of northern Brazil. We spent about 3 days with them. And I can tell you, based on those discussions, those people are going to be looking for businesses here that are going to benefit this entire country, or manufacturers on the whole. And they're not coming here to sell us. Lots of people think that they're just coming here to sell us. They're not going to sell. They're looking for raw materials, they're looking for agricultural products, they're looking for partnerships, and they're looking for products to buy from us. So those are a couple of things that are very positive in terms of the manufacturing.
A very good outlook. If I could jump right back to Joel with this information that we've gathered now, because we have both gentlemen confessing to improvements within their respective sectors, the private sector and the manufacturing and services. My question to you, Joel, is how do we sustain this growth? How do we maintain it? And not only that, but how do we ensure that we take it beyond what it is now?
The foundation is very important. To sustain growth, the work that you put in is just like building a house, constructing a house. You got to make sure that you have a sturdy foundation that could cater for if you want to throw up a second or a third floor in the future. And what we have seen in terms of policy, in terms of how the government came in and confronted the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, how they confronted the global challenges, external challenges as a result of the Russia-Ukraine war, high food prices, those are driven by external factors compared to the rest of the world. While confronting all of that, they have been steadfast in building out the strong foundation, building out, making the investments in the infrastructure, because that is important to support the future growth. While doing that, of course, this might be strange to say, but it's a fact. How do we sustain? You have to make hard decisions, which the government is doing, at the expense of withstanding or being subjected to criticisms. For example, not spending enough on other social aspects. For example, more increases in wages, more cash grant to households. I mean, we could do that, but how are we going to build a foundation to sustain? So that sustainability is important, to make the hard decisions in terms of investing for the future. If we don't, let me give you an example. If we don't invest in the port infrastructure, investing in a deep water port, at the rate of growth, and Mr. Ali spoke about the level of consumption in the economy, which is growing dramatically owing to increased population size and increased disposable income. Trade and commerce activities, that is going to increase. We're going to have more traffic. So we got to build the infrastructure to support that. If we don't build the infrastructure to support that, then how are we going to sustain it in the long run? So sustainability has to do with careful planning, careful policy making, making hard decisions, which the government is getting criticism for every day. And we don't have to go far for examples. 3 decades ago, we came from, as a result of poor management, as a result of bad policies compounded by many other factors, political factors, we were a bankrupt country. We were one of the poorest countries in the hemisphere. And it took 2 decades to transition out of that and attain economic stability. So now we have to build on that. And we have very strong indicators to support the future growth. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the world, from 900% 30 years ago to 50% just about maybe 7 years ago. Now it's below 30%. We have strong, the net reserve in the banking sector is growing. So that means you would have stability of exchange rate, stability of the currency. That is important to enable investment and to support the sustainable growth. We have low inflation rates, low single digit compared to the global average. Unemployment, I don't think we have an unemployment problem. We have a skills problem, which the government has to confront to aid that growth. So to summarize all that I said, or to translate simply what I said, sustainability is about careful planning and strategic investment in the economy in key areas: infrastructure, human resources, information technology, and making those hard decisions that they're going to be criticized for. Mm-hmm. So they have to manage expectations.
Right. And I especially hear you on that making hard decisions part. Mm-hmm. That is a very crucial part, yeah? I wanted to ask about the outlook for Budget 2024 of both Mr. Chung and Mr. Ali. I did mention that we're days away from the presentation of Budget 2024. So for your respective sectors, what would be your outlook for Budget 2024? Could I begin with Mr. Chung?
Yeah, I mean, the pattern, I mean, as Joel said, the pattern has been set, and we expect, to continue in the same vein. Continue developing the infrastructure, continue to invest in health and agriculture, and the gas to energy project becoming closer to reality. We expect, also some, relief measures in the budget for businesses for in terms of the operation. So we don't know. We're looking forward for some of those too. And so the trend is there. So we expect this growth to continue. We expect businesses to continue to flourish and to grow and expand and develop. So I mean, we're on the right footing and on the right track.
Mr. Ali, in terms of the manufacturing and services sector, what is your outlook for budget 2024?
Well, let me just say this. You know, we would have sent a detailed submission to the minister's office, and he did receive them. They were still among the discussion. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance to have a face-to-face because of scheduling issues, but we do know they were taken on, some of them were taken on board because we got back the feedback. But right, so Paul is exactly right. But let me just deal with a couple of specific ones quickly. So we would have asked, we would like to see some, you know, this proverbial basket of goods that VAT was based on. We were asking for some increase in that. And that goes directly to the vulnerability. You know, I don't want to get into a political thing with nobody in this country, but this is my very personal opinion. I don't believe in writing checks to people. I don't believe about cash out, but that's a different story. I don't want to get into that. I believe in ways, different ways government can do things to alleviate expenses for people as against writing them a check. But that's a different story. So we've talked about some relief in areas of taxes and Paul talked about it just now. Small businesses are very important to the development of any country. Many of the metropolises in the world were built on small business. History has proven that. This government has shown that there is good and increased recognition of small business. I think a couple of days ago, there was a huge grant, deliverable grants to a number of small businesses, but they are startups. They are startups. The thing is that in the small business, I'm very close to small business. Anybody would ask you that, you know, Ramsey, I am involved with small business development. You know, when you look at small development, some of them are different levels. You know, the startups, then you've got some of them evolving, and then some of them who are actually exporting into the world. And that's where you have got to pay some attention to them, to see where they are, the different levels of the scale, how can we support them. Very simple. Things like, you know, attending trade fairs overseas where they can promote their businesses, support for those kind of things. So I would like to see the continuation, and government has been doing that. So we ask them, you know, if they can continue to support and even increase that kind of thing. For the bigger guys, it's always about taxation, and government will always tell you, but private sector is always asking for tax breaks. But I mean, we don't always ask for tax breaks, no? Corporation taxes, consumption taxes. Well, I don't think we pay consumption tax anymore, but different levels of taxation. But as I said, the game changer for most manufacturers would be that cost of energy coming down into Guyana, and that is going to happen. So that's something that you can look forward to. Apart from that, you're going to continue to have increases in salaries. If one were to do a survey right now, I believe, Joel, you might know better than me, but if you were to track the salary of the regular person coming through the bottom of a company 2 years ago to now, I think it's almost 200% increase. I just did with my company. I mean, a regular guy walking to the company is now $8,000 a day. 2 years ago, it was what, $3,000, maybe $4,000. So that's the kind of thing that's happening. And you all talked about this, the increased disposable income driving growth in consumption. So those are things that are going to happen. We have a problem with labor. It's not an unemployment issue. It's not, for sure. It's an area of different areas so they're going to have to come from somewhere. We're building, 9 hotels, I think, based on my knowledge, or 10 hotels. Yeah. Where are those people going to come from? They got to come from somewhere. So those are more people coming into your country. That's more consumption again, right? Train skilled people. You've got to do that. So those are the kind of things I would like to see. I'm pretty sure the government has their fingers on the pulse, and they understand what's happening, what's coming. So yeah.
My final question before we wrap things up today, and I'm sure you all will have your own perspectives on it. Yeah, Mr. Bagwandin alluded to it earlier. He said, it may not. You have to make those hard decisions, whether to increase in social services and decrease in another area, or increase in this area and decrease in another. So there was this narrative being thrown around in the public sphere, suggesting that every household should receive X amount of money. And we saw many persons debunking that, right? Have you seen it, by the way? Have you heard about it?
All about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, why would you not favor the increase, Joel? I'm sure you might be more in a better position to answer this for us, right? But why would you not do that, right? And maybe, reduce something else. You were speaking about another sector earlier. It slipped me. But why would you not do that? Why would it not make sense?
Perfect example. It comes right back to your previous question on sustainability.
Right.
Let's take the number that was thrown around. If you do the math, I think the opposition was saying, oh, we have enough money to give $300,000 per household. If you do the math, if we have about 300,000 households, thereabout, and household is growing because the government is targeting maybe 50, 60,000 new households, housing program by 2025.
Right.
You run the numbers, it is in excess of $1 billion US. That's over $200 billion. That works out to. That is 1 year's oil revenue that the government earns. So should we take all the money that we get from oil and transfer it to household, which is going to drive consumption, drive inflation, and we're not investing for the future? Now, let me now throw a question and pivot it to answer within the same context. Often, and this will come out again because this is a narrative that comes out in the opposition's parliamentarians' debate during budget, that the budget is not a balanced budget. You often hear this narrative, balanced budget. But what is a balanced budget? What are we balancing? What are we measuring it against?
Right.
What is the ratio? My definition for a balanced budget is to build a country. That's the goal. The goal is to build a country, ensure that there is sustainability, and ensure that there is prosperity and there is opportunity for everybody. Now, if we look at the ratio of the population, using the 2012 census, you have about 70% of the population who are within the age range of 40 and below 40. Excuse me, that means you have a young population. That means you have to build a future for this 70% of the population. Because as they go to school, they go to university, they graduate, they need jobs. You got to create jobs. You got to create the environment for jobs to grow and attract investment to create opportunities for them. The other 30% of the population are those who would need social welfare services, the pensioners and so on. If you look, and I did this in the 2023 budget, you disaggregate the budget based on that. You look at all the investments on capital projects, investments that are meant to sustain the future growth, and those in social that are expended on social services. The ratio of the budget is 70-30, exactly 70-30. And I'm sure that ratio will be maintained again. It will be 70% to 30%. And that is what is important. How do we sustain the future growth? Should we spend more on consumption, which we can't sustain? Let me give you another example quickly. Salary increases, big debate all the time. If you look at the total public sector wages billed as a relative to the non-oil revenue, we can't factor in oil revenue because oil revenue that has, pursuant to the Natural Resources Fund, is to be expended on transformational projects, development projects. That is investment for the future. So if you take the non-oil revenue, the wages, the total employment cost is over 30% of government revenue, non-oil revenue. And if you look at the increase based on the across the board increase and the upward adjustments for anomalies over the past 3 years, it's about 50%, which works out to over $30 billion for the period. That's on average of $11 billion a year since 2020. So you can't take all the money to do that. You got to build for the future, because how are you going to sustain it? And that's the argument. And that's what I meant earlier by making the hard decisions. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. You can't sustain it in the future. Oil prices could collapse. You can't sustain the wages in the future. You can't sustain the cash grant. And you end up like the rest of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean that are suffering, such
Your
as
economy
Venezuela,
begins
Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago.
Right. Your economy begins to crumble, so to speak.
Correct.
Right. Mr. Chong, what is your perspective on that scenario?
Well, I mean, you know, Joel did a good job there, but I mean, it's the same thing. You know, you have to do things that are sustainable. We have to do, I mean, build the economy. I mean, you know, we have to. If you start giving out money, people many in the population will work. A lot of your industries would collapse. Agriculture, probably the first one would collapse. You know, we see typical example right in Venezuela. I mean, they don't have food. I mean, they have got the largest oil reserve in the world. But if it's not managed properly, and I mean, you know, during Chavez time and everything, they're sharing out, you know, lots of stuff, and you know, it's not sustainable. If there's a slide in the price of oil, I mean, you know, everything collapses and everybody, I mean, starts suffering. You don't want that. You want predictability, right? And you want things to be running in a way that, you know, you're sure about tomorrow, right? And things, you know, tomorrow when you wake up, things will be normal and okay. That, you know, it's like a gamble. You know, you don't want to go down that road.
The singer says, if tomorrow never comes, but then what if it does, right? Mr. Ali, over to you. What is your perspective? I'm
not going to waste time. You waste the time and repeat. But I mean, I said it before you asked the question. It doesn't make any sense. It's a complete nonsensical approach for me personally. Any country that, and I mean, don't mention the countries, look at the examples that when people do those things. Population that just sit and enjoy free money. Everybody gets lazy, you're not going to go anywhere. And people come and take your jobs, you say, well, oh, you know, and you start you and cry. It makes absolutely no sense. I believe government has to find different ways of decreasing the expenses of living. And they've been doing that. And that's why I'm looking forward to the budget. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to in terms of how we can move forward. But not at all. It makes no sense to me. Absolutely no sense.
And since you're already on the floor, Mr. Ali, may I ask for your closing remarks as I come around the table to get the others?
You know, I'm not a politician. I will never be a politician. I work in the private sector. But what we have seen in the last couple of years, I'm the chief executive of a private sector company, is it's a stable economy. It's a growing economy. It's a diverse economy. It's being fueled by hydrocarbons, money from which is good. All the things that the government are putting in place in terms of investment, in terms of savings, in terms of future, in my opinion, it's something that is positive. It's workable. Are they perfect? Of course not. They make mistakes like everybody else. And that's where we come in as private sector, to keep reminding them, hold on a second, here are some of the areas you can look at. So if a country was not growing and it was not the expectations, it's simple, you will have people coming here. People are coming into this country in droves. We had met, I don't even know, when I made my speech at the dinner, I think we had 130 engagements at the GMSA level of companies from the Caribbean, Latin America, North America, Australia, you name it, coming here looking for investment. So that's my answer to you.
Thank you. Mr. Bagwenden, your closing remarks.
I'll keep it short. The outlook for the future, the medium term and the long term, is positive.
And that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Mr.
I
Chong.
mean, similarly, I mean, I think, you know, we in an exciting part of Guyana history, you know, in the way thing, and I think, you know, the government is doing an excellent job in terms of how they manage the economy and pushing the right buttons to push the country to grow and develop and having a rounded economy, not just depending on hydrocarbons, but I mean, even the green economy. I mean, you know, Guyana has been a leader in the green economy. So, you know, we're well-rounded, we're strong, we're solid, and I look forward to the budget, and I mean, I look forward to the future of our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chung. Gentlemen, I must say thank you very much for being part of this panel. It was an absolute pleasure having you here to share your thoughts with us and your assessment of the previous year, the previous financial year, if I may, and of course, your outlook for Budget 2024. With that being said, I want to thank you as well for joining us. It has been a pleasure having you here with us, and we do look forward to having you here with us more as we continue to bring you updates right here on the National Communications Network. I'm Wendell Badri on behalf of the team, wishing you well until we meet again. So long.